The ramp that started a revolution. I never imagined I'd end up in a war with my own homeowners association. But there I was, fighting tooth and nail so that my daughter, Isla, could live with dignity. It began with something as simple and necessary as a wheelchair ramp. To outsiders, maybe it was just a slope of aluminum and concrete. To Isla, it was freedom. Isla wasn't just any teenager. After a devastating car accident 2 years ago left her paralyzed from the waist down, she didn't let it define her. She turned her pain into purpose. By the time she was 17, Isla was dominating state-level wheelchair racing competitions, with her eyes set firmly on the Paralympics. She woke up before dawn every day to train. She studied relentlessly, refusing to let her mobility define her intelligence or ambition. That ramp wasn't just functional. It was the front door to her independence. But apparently, the HOA didn't see it that way. It was a Tuesday morning. I was sipping coffee on the porch when I noticed the bright orange notice taped to our front door. I knew before even reading it that trouble had arrived. The bold, capitalized text at the top read like a threat. Violation, unapproved structure. Remove immediately or face fines. My stomach dropped. A violation? For a wheelchair ramp? I blinked in disbelief. Surely this was a mistake. It wasn't a decorative garden gnome or a holiday lights issue. It was a medical necessity. I dialed the HOA office immediately, expecting a quick clarification. Maybe someone didn't know about Isla's condition. Maybe they just needed context. A misunderstanding, surely. A woman named Carol answered. Her tone was clipped, rehearsed. Rules are rules, sir. The ramp was installed without approval from the board. It's in violation of aesthetic standards. Aesthetic standards? I repeated, barely containing my frustration. This is an accessibility ramp. For my daughter, who is disabled. I understand, Carol replied, though her tone made it clear she didn't. But all exterior modifications must be reviewed and approved before installation. And if I apply now? I asked, already knowing the answer. There's a board meeting in 3 months, she said, as if that were a reasonable delay. My voice tightened. So you're telling me my daughter has to be carried in and out of our house for the next 3 months? Because of a meeting? I understand this is frustrating, Carol said smoothly. But again, rules are rules. That phrase made my skin crawl. I knew what this really was, an abuse of power dressed up in policy language. Bureaucracy wielded as a weapon. When I told Isla about the notice, she didn't cry or rage. She laughed, a low, bitter sound that didn't belong on a 17-year-old's lips. Let me guess, she said. Some old folks on the board don't like how it looks. I nodded. Something like that. She shook her head. You know what this is, Dad. They don't like people who stand out. Especially not people like me. She wasn't wrong. Isla, with her fierce drive, mocha-brown skin, and refusal to be pitted, didn't fit into the cookie-cutter mold of Willowbrook Estates. And that made her a target. I decided to attend the next HOA meeting and appeal the violation directly. I walked into that beige-walled meeting room and found a cluster of board members seated like royalty behind a long table. Carol was in the center, wearing a navy blue pantsuit and a tight-lipped smile that never reached her eyes. I stated my case clearly. My daughter is disabled. This ramp is not a luxury. It's a legal and moral necessity. Denying her the right to access her own home is discrimination. Carol's smile didn't budge. This isn't about your daughter's condition. It's about proper procedure. You didn't seek prior approval. If you had, we wouldn't be having this discussion. Then I'll apply now, I said. Can we approve it retroactively? We'll review it at the next meeting, she replied. In 3 months. That's the policy, she said, and her tone implied the conversation was over. I stared at her for a long moment, then said, I'm not removing that ramp. She blinked, surprised. Then you'll be fined. Fine me. But if you think I'll tear down my daughter's freedom, you've got the wrong guy. I turned and walked out, fire in my chest. They wanted a fight? They were about to get one. The next morning, another envelope was taped to my door. This one more official looking. Final notice. Same message. Take down the ramp or face daily fines and legal action. But I wasn't backing down. If they wanted to escalate, so would I? I started asking around. Talking to neighbors. I met Mr. Harland, a retired mechanic who'd lived in Willowbrook for 20 years. When I told him about the violation, he scoffed. They've been pulling crap like that forever. It ain't about rules, it's about who they don't like. You mean they don't apply the rules to everyone? He snorted. Take a walk down Redwood Lane. There's a guy with a massive, unapproved pergola. No one says a word. But when I painted my mailbox red last year, got fined $75. I walked around the neighborhood and took pictures. Flagpoles over regulation height. Decorative statues that weren't pre-approved. Even another wheelchair ramp, untouched. Back home, I dug into the HOA's website and found the meeting minutes. A new amendment had been added 6 months prior, limiting exterior modifications. It was introduced and sponsored by, guess who, Carol. She had created this rule, then wielded it like a sword. When I told my next-door neighbor, Jasmine, about it, her face darkened. I overheard her once, Jasmine said. She was complaining about certain types of families bringing down the neighborhood. She didn't say it outright, but it was obvious what she meant. It all made sense now. Carol wasn't defending community standards. She was gatekeeping, filtering out anyone who didn't fit her suburban fantasy. So I rallied. I called a neighborhood meeting. I invited everyone who had ever received a violation or been targeted. To my surprise, the house was full. People were angry, tired of being policed. We don't have to accept this, I told them. We are this neighborhood, and if we stand together, they can't silence all of us. That night, I posted on social media a picture of Isla's ramp, a summary of our story, evidence of the HOA's selective enforcement. It went viral. Within hours, the messages started pouring in. Local news reporters, civil rights attorneys, other homeowners with similar experiences. The next morning, another notice from the HOA arrived. This one a cease and desist accusing me of defamation. It made me laugh. They were panicking. I contacted an ADA attorney named Marcus Delgado. He was incensed. They're violating federal law, he said. That ramp is protected under the Americans with Disabilities Act. We're not just going to stop them, we're going to bury them. The story aired that night. By morning, our sleepy HOA was the subject of citywide outrage. Parents of disabled children threatened to sue. Veterans groups called in. The mayor issued a statement demanding an investigation. Carol called an emergency meeting. This time, over 100 people showed up. Every seat filled. People stood in the aisles. Carol tried to open with damage control. There has been some misinformation. I stood and cut her off. There's no misinformation. You broke the law. You targeted families. You weaponized rules to exclude people you don't approve of. And now, you're being held accountable. Voices rose in agreement. One by one, neighbors spoke up. A retired veteran, a single mom, a disabled teacher. All had been fined, threatened, or ignored. Then came the breaking point. One of the board members, a soft-spoken man named Alan, stood. I joined the board to help, he said. But I stayed silent when I shouldn't have. I support reversing the ban. And I think Carol should step down. Applause erupted. Another member, Janice, stood and added, let's vote now. And just like that, the ban was overturned. Carol was removed. But it didn't end there. The city launched a formal investigation. Auditors uncovered years of embezzlement. Carol had siphoned HOA funds into a private account. She was arrested. The board collapsed. Lawsuits followed. And the HOA was forced to rewrite its bylaws entirely. Accessibility rights were made permanent. Selective enforcement was banned. Homeowners were repaid. And my daughter? Isla wheeled herself down that ramp the next day with the biggest smile I've ever seen. She didn't need to look over her shoulder anymore. No more threats. No more humiliation. Just freedom. We didn't just win a fight. We started a revolution. And to every HOA that thinks it can bully families into submission, remember this. You might control the rules, but you don't control the people. Sometimes, the quietest voices become the loudest when they speak up together. And sometimes, all it takes is a ramp to shake the whole system.